Continuing now with our deep conversation with Amber Athey of The Spectator. And we were just talking about Republicans next year. They're going to take the majority in the House, and they got a lot on their plate. They're going to do a lot of investigations. They're going to try to disrupt the Biden agenda, and that's good. That's great. But what's really happening next year is the ramp up to the presidential elections. I know everybody thinks 24 is the election, but in 23, that's when all the Republican candidates are going to declare. By this time next year, we'll already know everybody who's running. It's going to be deep into Iowa and New Hampshire. So Trump's declared. Is everyone else going to be scared away?
I don't think so. My guess is Mike Pompeo's definitely jumping in.
Seems like it.
Yeah. I mean, he keeps hinting about it on pretty much every interview that he's doing. But
what's the rationale for a Pompeo candidacy here?
I think the only argument he could potentially make for himself is saving us from Biden's disastrous foreign policy because of his experience at state.
And he's got pretty good achievements under the Trump presidency.
My concern about Pompeo is that prior to Trump, he's very war hawkish. And I think that a lot of the foreign policy that was done under his tenure at state was because it was what Trump wanted. And I think that if Pompeo were in charge, we would have been embroiled in probably more conflicts. I suspect that we wouldn't have had a plan to withdraw from Afghanistan or Syria.
All right. So we got Pompeo, and then who else do you think?
I mean, the big elephant in the room
right
is DeSantis,
Let's
right?
head right to Florida. So everyone says, why isn't DeSantis announced already? He can't yet. I don't know if people know this. In Florida, I think it was when Rubio was running for president, they passed a law that if you get the nomination for a party or something for higher office, you have to resign. You have to step down from your position. So he has to get into this legislative session first, and then maybe they'll change that law, and then he can announce. But do you think he's gonna? He's got to. Right?
I feel like he has to, because 4 years in politics is a really, really long time.
Yep.
And if he misses this window of opportunity where he really is the most or second most beloved person in the party behind Trump, I mean, anything could happen between 2024 and 2028. He could become a nobody by then. Your star fades very quickly in politics.
Or he could have a Chris Christie bridge scandal, right? Christie was the flavor of the month. He decided not to run in 12. Everyone figured he'd run it. He did run in 16, but he was damaged goods by then because of the scandal.
You just never know. I mean, Larry Hogan, for example, was a beloved.
We're already done with DeSantis. We're moving on to Hogan.
Well, we can go back to DeSantis, but as an example, I mean, when he won the governorship in Maryland, everybody was obsessed with him because it was, oh my gosh, how did you pull off this amazing upset? And his first year was pretty good. He got rid of the rain tax, he got rid of the bridge tolls and was kind of just chugging along. And then he decided to get all sanctimonious about Trump, and all of a sudden, obsessively so. And now he is, basically discarded used goods, but somehow thinks he's going to hop in the 2024 race.
Well, he's definitely going to run.
Definitely.
It's just, he's going
to get destroyed.
Yeah. I don't see any.
The Republican Party just isn't where he is anymore.
Right. Yeah. Sadly, I do think. Well, he used to be a good guy. I'm not sure now, actually, because I do think people say Trump broke you. He does seem broken from Trump. He can't actually give an interview without it being about Trump instead of just being about him. That's a problem. All right, back to DeSantis. I'm not going to let you wiggle away. He is going to run. The thing is, he needs to run in such a... Remember when he ran for governor 4 years ago, the first time, he ran as the Trump guy, right? He likes President Trump. He likes President Trump's policies. He's been able to succeed because of the path Trump sort of laid out there. So he's going to run against Trump by being pro-Trump, right?
I think he has to.
Right.
I mean, once you go anti-Trump, you alienate a huge part of the Republican base that you have to win in a primary. But what DeSantis does have going for him is the COVID policy. And I know people aren't as infatuated with that now because the pandemic mostly feels over, despite Democrats trying to bring masks back before the holidays. But Trump went along with all of the public health bureaucrats. He went along with Dr. Fauci and Dr. Deborah Birx, and he implemented lockdowns.
This is a great point. DeSantis, everyone says, well, how can DeSantis run against Trump? How does he distinguish himself? I mean, first of all, stylistically, there's ways for him to distinguish himself, certainly. But secondly, he can say, listen, bottom line is, I would have told Fauci to go take a flying leap. You know how I can prove it? Because I did tell Fauci to take a flying leap.
I think that's his most effective counterpoint to Trump, 100%.
Right.
And Trump, again, as much as he paints himself as the outsider, that was true in 2016. I don't know about in 2024 when, again, he's backing Kevin McCarthy and Ronna McDaniel for their leadership positions.
Yeah.
I mean, here's what I'll say about Trump. I am a fan of Trump. I think he has great policies, or had great policies throughout his presidency. Mm-hmm. He was really bad at picking the right people to surround him and implement those policies. And lately, it feels like he just is, it's not about grievances on behalf of the American people, it's about personal grievances now. It's about Trump grievances.
It comes across that way. In fact, the fact that he attacked DeSantis a few weeks ago, and it certainly did boomerang. By the way, we should tell you, the latest polls, you know, after Trump is an announced candidate and declared now, so you would think he would get a big boost, DeSantis is actually doing better against Trump in the latest poll for Republican voters. So obviously there's still some caution about President Trump as the de facto nominee. And his instinct is going to be to attack DeSantis the way that he did. And there are Trump supporters who will say, listen, DeSantis hasn't criticized Trump, that may be true, but the mere fact that he hasn't said, I'm not going to run, we should all support Trump, that in and of itself is an attack. That's what they say.
I think that's ridiculous. I mean, this is politics. Get over yourself, really.
Well, let me make the argument. Trump thinks he was an incumbent president. 2020 happened, and for various reasons, it wasn't a fair election. He goes further than I would, certainly, but he thinks he's got another term ahead of him. He's running. Everyone else should back off and act like he's an incumbent.
I just don't think he's earned that. I really don't. I mean, it seems to me that people who really like Trump that I've talked to or loved Trump were really, really upset about what he did to DeSantis ahead of the midterms and thought it was so uncalled for and ridiculous. And like, it's politics, right? I mean, how are you going to anoint yourself the king and tell everybody else to step aside? Win the primary. Yeah. If you're the best guy, you should be able to win the primary.
So you represent an age group here, younger than me, certainly, and it's a very important voting bloc. Remember, we were told immediately after the midterms that it was young voters that abandoned Republicans and voted Democrat. Actually, now that we've seen the numbers, that's not exactly what happened. But how do you think your generation votes right now, especially with the abortion decision now with the Dobbs decision and a whole lot of other cultural factors that are in there? What's the best argument or what's the best message for your generation?
Well, I think for millennials, one of the hardest things for us is having the financial means to buy a house and start a family. Yeah. And I think the Republican Party can certainly make the case that putting Democrats in power has made everything more expensive. You have these major corporations buying up single family homes and converting them into rental units, driving up the cost of buying a house. And their policies towards families are anti-family.
MSNBC will say, well, that's why we wanted to pay off your student loans for you. You should be thankful. See, there you go. We've made things better for you.
I mean, it's hard to compete with giving people free money, I guess. But they'll see the effects when inflation keeps rising.
Well, that's the thing. Republicans have to make the case, say, oh, yeah, that free money, this is what it costs you. And also, by the way, basic fairness. I mean, I don't think you have to be a millennial or Gen X or baby boomer or Gen Z and those people to understand that it's just fundamentally unfair that we should all be paying for somebody who got a doctorate's degree at Harvard in women's studies.
I think there are a lot of millennials like me who didn't take out a lot of student loans or any at all and worked their butt off to pay off what little they did have and see their neighbor getting a free handout and thinking, well, where's my refund?
Right. And sadly, in these midterms, the only Republican message that we were hearing about the student loan payout thing was, well, that's unconstitutional, so it's not going to happen. That's not a principled argument. That's not the way you actually combat the policy.
Right. That's just, well, the court will take care of it for me.
Right. Meanwhile, everyone saw it and said, well, we're going to vote anyway.
It was, basically a bribe.
All right, more to come with Amber Athey, including a little conversation about one of her favorite social media stars, Dylan Mulvaney. That's coming up too. Keep it here. More to come with O'Connor tonight.